My shoes. I'm your host, Daniel, and I'm excited for today's guest. We have a really special guest. We have Mr. Kevin Patton. He's a school counselor. So, ladies and gentlemen, please give me a nice round of applause for Mr. Kevin. Kevin, thank you so much for taking time to be with us. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Daniel.
Oh, yes, yes, awesome. So, a school counselor. So, um, what do you do? If you can
Sure. No,
explain,
that's
yes. What?
that's a good question. I think you know I could spend a lot of time on that answer, but it really kind of boils down to three main areas of focus, and that's helping students with academic development, personal and social development needs, and if they may be struggling in areas that are not necessarily related to school, but it impacts their ability to focus. And then a lot of time, and probably the thing I spend the most on that I enjoy the most is that future planning piece and helping students not only be good high school students, but I want them to leave high school with a plan and to have ideas about what they want to explore. And certainly their ideas will change, but just to know that life's so much bigger than high school. And even though it can be really difficult sometimes, that future planning piece is really my passion.
Yes, awesome. So let's talk before COVID happened. So
Yeah.
when school was there, would you go out to classrooms or was this like during lunchtime? How would you try to connect or let the students know you're there?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So we have our own individual offices and in a guidance department here within the building. And I'm at a large high school. I'm at Dublin Kaufman. We've got almost 2,000 students. So
Wow.
we have a large department compared to a lot of districts. And I'm one of six school counselors in the building. And then we have additional support staff that are amazing and support students in many different ways on a more specific basis. But really, we do a lot of individual meetings within our offices with students. Sometimes it's based on students' requests. Sometimes a teacher or a parent might give us a heads up that they'd like us to connect with a particular student. And we do get out into the classroom. Sometimes we have lessons we deliver and we have a curriculum we follow, very similar to teachers, but ours is a little more spread out. And we're
Hmm.
certainly not in the classroom on a quite daily basis for sure. But periodically we get out there at least a couple times a quarter.
Okay, okay. And are you there like the same time school is open? So are you there Monday through Friday? Does your
Yep.
time varies? Your
No, that's
schedule?
a great question. We're technically on a teacher contract, and we're on the same hours as a teacher would be on. But certainly there are days where you stay a little bit later, and
Hmm.
everybody kind of on their own schedule. And some people need to leave right at the contractual time end so they can pick up children, and then maybe you go home and you've got additional work to do once those kids are in bed. But it is, just kind of the nature of the school year. There are certain times of the year where I'm doing a little bit more outside of school than others, like especially during college application season. I'm writing a lot of recommendation letters and things of that nature, but for the most part it's a pretty typical school schedule for us.
Oh, wow. Okay, awesome. So if you can, Kevin, give us a typical day. So again, let's go before and then we'll go after or during COVID. So a typical
Sure.
day when you went to school or to work.
Yeah, so for our district, and it's going to vary from each one, but our students start their school day at 7:55 is when the first period bell rings. So we get here typically a little closer to 7:15 as staff members so that we
Okay.
can plan for our day, collaborate with our peers and colleagues. We do have students that sometimes come into school for earlier meetings or support. We have various intervention plans that some students may have, and a lot of those meetings to support those individuals take place before the school day. So our day starts about, I would say 45 minutes before most of the students, but they start
Okay.
rolling in around 7:30, 7:40, and
Uh-huh.
then from there, there's really not a lot of typical days, I'll be honest, and I kind of like that
That's
about the
good.
job.
Yeah, that's good.
It varies tremendously, and it really, depending on where we are in the year, I might have my day planned exactly the way I want it to go, but then at the end of the day, I didn't touch a single thing on my to-do list
Yes.
because I had a crisis come up or something happen that just absolutely had to take priority. And you have to be okay with that. So I think if you're someone who's a little more rigid and needs a routine, I think teachers can plan a little bit more for what their day is going to look like.
Hmm.
I think it's important for us to plan, but we also have to go into it with the understanding that that plan very well could not
Yeah.
happen that day.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's interesting. And I know, so it depends on what's going on with students
Yep.
and how they're feeling. So is there like once you meet a student, the protocol like do you set up a schedule with them? Like when you
Sure.
talk to them, is it
Yeah,
saying,
that's a
okay,
great question. School counselors have very different caseloads depending on school district. Our I would say we're probably on the luckier side of that, where I have usually anywhere from about 325 to 340 students on my caseload at a time, which sounds like a lot, but there
wow,
are counselors
yes.
out there with twice as many, three times as many, and that's where you reach the point where you're really not able to do the job the way it's supposed to be done. I do feel like in a department where I'm supported by other colleagues and having a more manageable caseload, that we can do things of like just like what you're asking about. There might be some students that might need a little more of a regular check-in for whatever reason. But if it turns out to be a situation where they need that more on an ongoing basis, that's where we help the families get connected with the appropriate resources so that that can take place. And we even have some additional resources within our school district to help in these situations. We have a great partnership with Centero, which is a local counseling agency, and they have someone who's dedicated to our students specifically 2 days a week. So they may meet with those students weekly or biweekly until they kind of develop some coping strategies and skills to manage some of their anxiety or stress that they may be experiencing. We have wonderful staff members in our school district called student support specialists, and they're actually licensed social workers. So their skill set's a little bit different than ours, and they hone in a little bit more on those students that need more of that regular attention to help with maybe social skills or just really debilitating levels of anxiety and things of that nature. So we're very fortunate to have the mental health support in this district and the dedication from the leadership to make sure that those types of resources are available, because it does allow me to spend more of my time helping more of the masses and creating messaging and getting in front of students that I might not be able to help if I were more focused on those students that need regular attention.
So Kevin, do you have a team that you work with for the schools, or like you have a meeting, and who do you report to? How many people are in your team?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So we're very fortunate. The counseling staff and the administrative staff have an amazing working relationship in our school building. We've got a head principal and 3 assistant principals, and then there are 6 counselors, a student support specialist. We have 2 school psychologists in our department.
Okay.
We have a drug and alcohol counselor, intervention prevention counselor, and then we also have our secretaries and our registrar in this office and special education secretary. So from a team standpoint, we're probably one of the larger ones you'll find in the state, I would imagine. I can't say that based off of my own research or anything, but we're very blessed to have that sort of resource build up in this place, and I feel like our families and students are very well supported as a result. So our direct reports are the principals. So we do everything by alphabet. So it works out nicely because I have, for example, I work with all students who are in the alphabet. Their last name falls between P and SK. So if your last name falls in that range, you're with me for all 4 years. So hopefully you like me when you enter, or you'll get to like me before you leave.
Oh, here comes Kevin again. Hide.
That's right. You're stuck with me your entire time, but it's great because you get to know the kids that way. And even if you only meet them a couple times early on for scheduling purposes or whatever, they at least know who you are. And if something does come up, they at least know where to go, who to go to. And by the time they graduate, I know who all of my seniors are. We've had multiple conversations, and that's fun because at that point I get to read a lot of the surveys they fill out to help with recommendation letters and things like that, and I'll learn even more about them, and then it just creates more conversation that I never had with them before. So it's a great setup, and it really is a great team atmosphere, and we're very fortunate that the staff morale and the student morale in this building, on a regular basis, is very positive from my standpoint.
Kevin, what qualification do you need to have?
Sure. No, that's a great question. So you need a master's degree and a school counseling license. So that's kind of the short end of it. But it's a pretty extensive master's program. It requires a lot of in-person hours with other counselors. So there's a lot of on-the-job training that takes place before you can take your licensing exam. But obviously that's a wonderful thing, and it prepares you better than any classroom could for the actual job.
Okay. And I know with, as you're talking to the students, and because I was talking to my coworkers here, and I was asking if you ever talked to your school counselor, or did you know your school counselor? And one was like, yeah. One was like, yeah, I talked to him. She helped me out for college, and it's strange because I'm thinking about it. I never, maybe because I moved every year, so every year in high school was a different school, but I never got to meet my school counselor. And what would make a good school counselor? What is something that
Sure.
you need to have, some characteristics, something that makes you really to connect or to bond?
Yeah, I think ultimately you just have to genuinely enjoy working with kids, and I think you have to appreciate that some are going to be more difficult to connect with than others, but that's awesome. And I've got a couple of students that it took me a year or more to really get them to a place where they trusted me or would talk to me or even
Yes.
say hi to me in the hallway. So I mean, I think to your point, moving around makes it difficult, but a lot of it depends on the number of students that counselor is responsible for. Again, I think because of my ratio, I have an opportunity to get to know kids a little better than some counselors do. But it really just comes down to you have to enjoy talking to kids and helping kids. And if you don't like that and you find yourself in this role, then I don't know how you got there in the first place, because you
Yes.
fooled a lot of people. But yeah, I mean, that's just what it's all about. I mean, just to see a student who's, just so excited to tell you about something that's going on in their life that they're proud of, or that's going better, or to be that person who can help them process through one of the most difficult situations they've ever found themselves in. I feel very fortunate that kids trust me to share those experiences and to try to help them. And I always tell them I don't have a magic wand. You're not going to walk out of here a new person with all of these ways to solve this, but you're at least going to have ideas, hopefully, and a perspective that you don't come up with on your own. And sometimes just talking to someone who will listen to you is all you needed at that moment. So
That's right.
it's tough to say, but I mean, it's an awesome job, and
That's good.
day in, day out, it is never the same. But just like anything, some days are easier than others. But even on the hardest days, for the reasons that I don't enjoy like the really terrible things that happen. But again, I'm just thankful that I'm someone with a skill set who's able and willing to help kids that find themselves in those tough situations.
Yes. So you help them out as they apply for college. Is there any like students that come back, like maybe they finish or they're in college and come back and say, hey, just want to, Mr. Patton, I want to thank you? Or do you get a lot of students coming back? Or
Sure. I mean, I won't say we get a lot, but like it's interesting because I think as students transition from high school to that experience, a lot of times if they come back, it's pretty soon after they graduated. They still haven't quite let go of that connection, and it's still pretty fresh with them, and they still value those relationships they had. So it's not
yes.
uncommon to see kids come in on a break or, from their school, or just to come in
Uh-huh.
and maybe send us an email or something like that. But, a lot of them you don't hear from anymore, and I would love to. And I always tell kids, drop me a line. Let me know how you're doing. Just to kind of let me know what's going on. I love hearing from students, and some of them are great about
Yes.
that, and others they don't. But that's okay. When I was a teenager, I probably wasn't really thinking about that either. I was just focused on myself.
You're like, that's it. See ya.
Exactly. But yeah, we do have kids that will come back, and it's awesome when they do. I love to see what they're
Yes.
doing. I've had students go off to the military and then come back, and just to see the amazing changes and things that
Yes.
they've had occur in their lives as the result of making that really honorable decision it's just cool, man. It's an
Yes.
awesome job.
That is awesome. That must be a great feeling when they come back and they're like, "Hey, Mr. Patton, thank you. Just for the words of wisdom or the encouragement." What is a student able to say, or are they able to speak to you about anything, or is there a specific, do you need a witness, or is it just you
Yeah.
confidential? What's
That's a great question. I'm glad you brought that up, because I think there is some confusion with that sometimes with students and families. Our goal is to be a confidant and to keep matters confidential between us and that student, so that they know they can trust us to talk through some difficult things. But we really, as public educators, are mandated reporters, and we're responsible for making sure that those students are safe as well. So if anything comes up, and it's posted in my office, it tells students exactly when I need to break confidentiality. So it's rarely a surprise to a student when they know I'm going to have to call home about something, because it's when they've shared something with me that makes me think, when you leave here, I'm going to have some concern for your safety. And
Yes.
I absolutely need the people in your life, not just in the school, but in your home, to know how we can work as a team to support you. And I'll tell you, in my almost 10 years of doing this, I've never had a student totally like flip out over that. Like they get it. Like they're
Yeah.
telling somebody because they know they need help. And
Hmm.
and even 9 times out of 10, or probably even more than that, the student who thinks my parents going to be so upset, don't. I say, listen, you
Yes.
can sit here while I call them if you'd like, or you don't have to. I can have you sit with somebody else. And then as the conversation goes on, they see how their parent, sometimes parents aren't surprised, sometimes they are, but then they're just like, how do I support my kid? And that's what
Yes.
you need that student to hear is, listen, all these
That's
adults
awesome.
in your life just want you to be well, and they want to help you. So it's great that you're not holding this in anymore. So it's really, again, those are tough conversations sometimes, but I just feel fortunate to be someone who can help in those situations.
Awesome, awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're just now joining us on A Walk in My Shoes, we're interviewing Mr. Kevin Patton. He's a school counselor. The show's been brought to you by AMP, Achieve More and Prosper. Again, if you have any questions, anything you would like for me to ask Mr. Patton, please write it in the chat. I'll be more than happy to ask him. Again, just let us know. We more than happy to answer your question, or Mr. Pat will, not me, Mr. Pat will. All right, again, thank you, Mr. Kevin, to take time to be with us. Let's go from the beginning. Now, where did you grow up? Where did you go to school?
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up in a really small community. It's called Heath, Ohio. It's out
Okay.
close to Newark. It's one of the larger. There's an OSU regional campus out there in Newark. A lot of students from my high school who decided to go to college would start out at that Newark campus of OSU. So I grew up there my entire life, and it was a great place to grow up, but it was small. And by the time I was ready to graduate, I ended up going to Miami University, which was just a few hours away. But for me, it could have been even further. There was no one there I knew. It was all brand new experience for me, and that was a challenge at first, but ultimately ended up being a great experience. And I learned a lot about myself and the type of people I wanted to surround myself with. And I went in without much direction in terms of what I wanted to do. I had a lot of educators in my family, especially my mother and my two sisters were teachers. So everyone kind of assumed that would be a good fit for me. Because I had heard that so much my entire life, I decided to do something different. And I said, it's not for me. I'm not going to do that. In hindsight, that would have been a great idea to
Yes.
just go education right from the beginning. But I don't regret anything. I was a marketing major, and I met some wonderful people through that program, and I ended up graduating with a business degree and spent the first 5 years after college in mostly sales and marketing type roles. And the bulk of that time I was selling employee benefits through a large insurance carrier. So I was working with insurance brokers every day. I was traveling all over Northeast and Northwest
Okay.
Ohio.
I'm sorry, Mr. Kevin. So I want to clarify. So you didn't study to be a school counselor. That just came after. So you were
Yes.
sales and
Yeah,
business,
mostly.
and then
Yeah, primarily sales. And that was, coming out of college, I thought this is where I'm going to go. I'm going to make all this money. It's going to be
yes,
great. Because at that point in my life, I thought that was so important. And, the older you get, you recognize it's not that important if it's not a fulfilling lifestyle. And, it was taking me all over the place. And I was in a serious relationship with my now wife. And once we got married, I started to really think about, is this something I can see myself doing and raising a family? And we didn't have any children yet. And my wife is amazing and very supportive, and she's also in business. She graduated with an accounting degree, and now she does majority of what she does is accounting and finance. But
yes,
she does great. And when I told her I was thinking about quitting my job to go back to school to become a counselor, she just supported it. And she knew it wasn't something I was just kind of going out and coming up with out of thin air. Like, we had been talking about
yes,
how, I don't know if this is going to be a good lifestyle for us when we start a family. And so we were lucky. I had made a decent amount of money as a sales rep, but I didn't live a lifestyle that required a lot of money. So I had saved a lot of it, and that made it even easier to go back to school because I didn't have to take out student loans or anything like that. And so it's funny, I quit the highest paying job I'll ever have. and across the street from my building was a golf course. And I walked over there in business attire and met their head of maintenance, and I joined their grounds crew for a summer because I got free golf.
Really?
School year was out, so I just I got up at like 5 o'clock every morning. I went and mowed greens and did whatever grounds work that needed to be done, and met some really nice people. And then the following school year started, and I got my substitute teacher license so that I could get some education experience while I was in grad school to become a counselor. So yeah, it was funny. I started making, I think, $8 or $9 an hour, and
Wow.
just loving life. Lost like
Yes.
10 pounds a month. It was great.
That's awesome. That's one way to lose weight.
Yeah, no, it was good. And I think as I was trying to search for what was going to be a fulfilling direction for me, I went to a meeting with my wife where her company was connected to Big Brothers Big Sisters,
Okay.
and it dawned on me that sounds great. So I just kind of independently reached out and asked how I could get involved, and they had this really cool program at the time called Project Mentor. And every Monday afternoon, I would leave my job. I would go have lunch with an assigned mentee, and he was a 7th grader at the time, and his name's Charles, and we still have a great relationship to this day. And that was just a really cool experience for me, is just kind of getting to know him and taking him around to do things he normally wouldn't have been able to do, and just seeing what a neat kid he was. And I just felt like I could see myself doing something like this more for a living. And then I started doing my research, and I recognized you didn't have to have a teaching background to be a counselor, but it could be a little more difficult to get in sometimes without that. But no, it's been great. I did grad school for 2 years and got really lucky. As soon as I graduated and got my license, 2 positions actually opened up at Kaufman High School, and this is not a place that positions open up very often.
Yes.
And I, without my education background, I didn't know how big of a deal that was, and so I put my name in the hat and got really lucky, and the interview process went well. It gave me a shot.
Awesome. That's so awesome. So, Kevin, during your time in school, what is right, I have it right here. Man, where'd it go? What is one thing that you wish you would have learned in school, or studied more to help you where you are now? Like, I wish I'd have known this before.
Well, one thing that's almost a little unrelated to this, I think, in terms of just preparing yourself for, for me to have that stability to be able to make a switch like I did. I obviously had the support of a spouse, which was huge,
Yes.
but even just like I had some really good financial literacy in college. And I think we're doing a better job at the high school level now than we did when I was in high school. But I think understanding how money works and how it can work for you when you save it in the right ways, and it's not just like it in a bank or in a shoebox on the bed. Like there's ways that you can be really disciplined about, saving just a little bit when you're really young, and to understand how that money can grow when you get older was a huge lesson for me that really resonated. So, just that financial literacy piece. But then I think something that I wish I had done at a younger age to prepare me for just having the type of lifestyle that I want is being a reader. Like, truly, honestly, like, whether, fiction, nonfiction, whatever, like, there's so many really interesting books out there written by people with tons of experience who are living very interesting lives. And they share all this knowledge through books and I didn't read for years and years and years. And then right around the time I was probably like 33 or 34, and I had a young son who wasn't staying in bed. So I was in his room all the time. So I just started listening to audiobooks. It's kind of how it started. And now, I listen to about 50 a year. I try to read about 10 or 11 more on top of that. And it started out really small and has grown to that. So I think just being a reader who actually pursues knowledge that you want to learn about versus just feeling like you're only going to school to do the things you have to check the boxes off on to
Yes.
kind of graduate or do whatever. But people who read and pursue knowledge that is going to benefit them in the long run are just, light years ahead of people who don't.
Oh, that's good. That's good. All right. So, did you guys hear that? So, reading, again, Mr. Kevin started off with audiobooks, having someone to read, which is good. That's a good way to start.
Yeah.
And then be able to
Hey.
just follow, and I guess baby steps, right? It's just
Yeah,
baby
there's a
steps
great app. There's an app called Libby that is free. It connects to your library account, and you get all those audiobooks for free. You might have to wait for some of them, but it's
Yes.
awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah. So reading, Make sure you guys are reading. Make sure you read something. I guess what you love doing, what you want to do, or think. I guess what you want to. You think you want to do until you switch halfway in what you're doing. Awesome. So, Kevin, what is one thing you love about what you do?
Sure. I mean, I feel very lucky because I love working with the students and the families are, I'm very lucky to be in a community that is full of just supportive people who, are looking for ways to help their kids and are really great about partnering with the school. I have a team in my building that I couldn't just get along with any better than I do. But, the best part of the job and the most rewarding part is just helping students. Some of them pretty easily on their own get things figured out, and it's great getting to know them and to see them thrive. But to have the opportunity to meet some kids who really are stuck or going through some stuff in their life that they don't know how to handle on their own, and just to help them process and get back to a place where they feel like things are positive again, it's great. I mean, it's a constant, just ebb and flow in that way, because some days are really hard, and I have kids that, gosh, I feel like, how am I ever going to help this kid with this? And you just sometimes it's just letting them know you're there and talking to them about things that are unrelated, so they just have a distraction. It's crazy.
That's awesome. So do former kids come and ask for guidance as still like?
Sure. Yeah. It's not as common as some people may think. There are, but certain kids that you get to know really well, absolutely. I'll have kids reach back out to me, or a parent that got to know me really well throughout their child's time here, and just ask for an opinion on something, or just want to process something. And I think that's really cool. I mean, that makes me feel really good about the way they view me as a professional, and how I might be able to help them in some way.
Oh, that's awesome. And is there a difference between a guidance counselor and a school counselor? Is that, or is it just
no?
A name?
I thank you for asking that. And I'll be honest. So technically, those, they're interchangeable in a lot of people's eyes, but the term school counselor has been adopted by the national organization that oversees and advocates for the profession, and it's been, at least 15, maybe going on 20 years that we've tried to cut ties with that guidance counselor term, because of just how it got its start and some of the reputation that it had, and the role itself from historically speaking when that started compared to what this job is now, and how it incorporates so much more mental health support and things of that nature. The term school counselor is by far and away the preferred term by any counselor that I know. There are some that I know who have been doing this job long enough that they're just always going to call themselves guidance counselor, and that's fine. I'm not offended. There are a lot of people I work with who respect what I do very much, and when they refer to our profession as the guidance counselor, I get it. Like, that's just what they know. That's what the term was when they were in school. But you'll never hear me call myself a guidance counselor. I'll never, all of my signatures will say school counselor. I always introduce myself as a school counselor. So there are people that do get offended. I find that a waste of my energy. It's okay to try to educate someone, but at the same time, as long as they're using it in a respectful way, it can be interesting.
It's like, it's not worth to defend it. Okay. Okay. All right. So like in every job, every career, we've have our ups and downs. Now, has there ever been a downtime, like one that you're like, you know what, maybe it was a hard time. What was your hard time, and how did you get out of it? Who helped you? Who was your mentor?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think, I have a couple of, being one of 6 counselors, I'm just really lucky. I'm in other counselors' offices every day processing things and trying to understand things. And, I could give you countless examples of really hard days. This year in particular, I've had, we had multiple students and a parent die in a car accident. We've had, suicides with students in the past and parents in the past. Mm-hmm. And those days are just the worst kind of days. And it's impossible to know exactly what to do or say in those situations. But
yes.
Again, I think just being someone who can help connect those families with the right resources, and to just surround them with support services to help them through the most difficult times in their lives is it's a very fortunate position to be in. But yeah, I mean, this year I had to go into classrooms and talk to students after we lost 2 students in that car accident, and it's just never a
Yes.
position you want to find yourself in.
Yeah, yeah, that's tough. Wow, that is tough. And is there someone you look up to? Is there some maybe I don't know if it's an author or someone or family member
Yeah.
that you kind of go for counseling, I guess, or I don't know.
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, so I mean, there's definitely a couple of counselors in our department that I go to a little more regularly than others. Really, just depends on the type of question I have, because that's like what I love about our department is we have just people with different strengths and skill sets that really apply to different scenarios, and just the knowledge and the care they have for the profession and their willingness to help, us as colleagues and students. There's just I just feel so lucky. There's literally no one in this department that I don't go to for a different reason. So I would just say my colleagues in this building for sure. In terms,
Well,
and definitely, parents have been a huge, part of influencing my life, more along the lines of what I've watched them do versus my dad wasn't the type to sit down and give me a lot of like heart to heart
yes.
advice. But I think they trusted me to be independent, and just watching them live their lives in such a positive way that they were always helping people and they were committed to things that just, were really something to be proud of. So that was great. And then, with all the books I read, certainly there are authors that I follow more than others who have kind of had more of an impact on me. If students are looking for like a book to start with that might help them with some of the things they're
Yes.
stuck with, one of the books I've encouraged more and more of my students to read is a book called Atomic Habits by James Clear, and he is actually
Atomic. Say it again. Atomic
so
com-
Atomic Habits. So it's
habits.
like,
Okay.
yeah, so it's basically, atoms like create things, and it's just all these little tiny things that make up all matter in the world. And basically atomic habits the whole concept is you do the littlest things over and over again, and you make the right decisions over and over again. And then over time, you don't even recognize the amount of difference that can take. But what I love about the book is that it is very fluid to read, and it gives amazing resources and ideas and ways to improve things in your life that you're trying to improve. Because the whole idea is not only to how to create new habits that you want to create, but how to get rid of the ones that you're looking to get rid of. And the guy just gives you just so many ways to try it. So you've got all these places to start, and then you use the ones that stick, and certain ones that don't, you don't worry about. But I've created resources from that book. I've shared it with a lot of my students and families, and I love that the guy's local. He actually went to Denison University here in Granville, Ohio, and
Okay.
I think he still lives in the Columbus area. But he just seems like a great guy, and he's created this just awesome roadmap to
That's good.
make improvements in your life. And I think for me, it's definitely been the most helpful book for me to actually improve some of the things in my life that I'm trying to improve. Like I've got a great self-care routine in the morning now that I've been doing now for over a year, and even just the reading that I'm doing now. And there's all kinds of tips and strategies in there that I feel like they've made those lifestyle changes way easier than people might think.
That's good. That's good. I'm glad. I'm glad. Um, we're gonna give it. We're gonna open it up for the students or anyone who has questions. Again, we're gonna give them. But before we go to that, let's go. I have some fun questions. I know I've been asking a lot of questions, but let's go with some fun ones. Here we go. What is your favorite food?
My favorite food, it's probably nothing too exciting. I mean, definitely pizza is one that we eat pretty regularly in our house.
Yeah.
But I think in my 30s, I've discovered avocados, and there's a lot of like, guacamole is great, but like throwing it on a piece of toast with a fried egg on top,
Oh yes.
bacon, ooh, it's really good.
Amazing. Yeah, it's funny 'cause
Yes.
my daughter's into avocados and she's 4, so it's avocados. And I'm surprised because she likes avocados, and then I'll give her a slice of tomato. She's like, wow, this is juicy. I'm like, okay. and she'll just eat it like that. I'm like, yes.
Oh, it's great. I know you love it when your kids eat those healthy things.
Yeah, I'm like,
They
oh.
turn down a lot of it.
I like it. Okay, here we go. You can never stop smiling when, fill in the blank.
I think in general, people give me a hard time jokingly because I typically am smiling. And I think it's a goal of mine to try to spread that, and just walking through the hallways. Like, there's not a single person I'll walk by without smiling and saying hello. And I think just like knowing that I'm in a place where I get to interact with awesome people and to help kids every day, I mean, that keeps me smiling right there. So it's not hard for me to find things to smile about.
Good. All right, that's good. Your favorite superhero?
Oh, that's tricky. So we have a lot of superhero stuff in our house. I've got young kids. I've got an 8-year-old daughter, a 5-year-old son, and a 3-year-old daughter. I mean, Spider-Man's very popular. Batman's very popular in our house. There's a movie called We Can Be Heroes on Netflix right now that my 3-year-old makes us watch way more than any of us want to watch. One of those, cheesy Disney movies, but she loves it. So.
We Can Be Heroes. Do you ever get, because my daughter watches shows and we watch them over and over, but it's funny because there's times where I'm like, shh, hold on, let me see, even though I've seen it many times. I'm like, shh,
for sure. You get sucked into things that you're almost embarrassed to admit. Yep, yes. I can relate to that.
Oh, that's so funny. I'm like, oh man, what am I doing? I'm like, go ahead, Claire, watch whatever. Oh man, that's funny. That's the life of a dad, father just, oh man. If you had one wish, Kevin, what would it be? And you can't ask for more wishes.
Yeah, that's a good point. Honestly, right now, what resonates the most with me is for us to be able to go back to a time where COVID wasn't just totally destroying every bit of normalcy and stopping us, because as a high school counselor, to see the impact it's had, especially on teenagers, if I could just make this go away like it never happened, I would do that in an instant, because it's been brutal.
Yeah, you're right. And I know I've talked about before COVID. So how is it now with COVID? Are you meeting them like through a plexiglass? Are you on Zoom or Skype?
Yeah, it's a great question. So a lot of my meetings are just like the one you and I are having right now. Okay. Our students have Gmail accounts, so we do a lot of Google Meets. We do have students that come in twice a week on a hybrid schedule, so we have a very low percentage of our students here on any given day. And in those cases, we all wear masks. We keep at least 6 feet apart, and I do have an office set up that I can meet with people in here as well. So if students are comfortable with that, we do that. But, and a lot of it might be just phone calls as well. But the face-to-face virtual meetings are probably the most common right now. But, you'd be surprised. There's a lot of students that even during those conversations, they're not wanting to turn their camera on. And it's a very different style of conversation. And, not being able to read body language really makes my job more difficult sometimes. But I'm just glad if they'll take my calls or meetings in any way, they'll take it right now, because I've never felt as disconnected from kids as I do this year. And, we're all ready for this to be a thing of the past.
Yeah, I bet it's tough, for the kids because you need to, like you said, connect, and you need to be able to read their body. And through here, again, they could just put a screen with their name on it or the letter M, whatever,
I mean, teachers this year are going to have no clue who was in their class. I mean, we have so many kids that are virtual learners, and I mean, it's tough because some of our kids that need that personal connection the most are the ones that are really struggling right now, because they don't have that structure. And for them to be motivated to do their work, they need to have somebody that they know cares about them, and it's hard to do that through a computer.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, it's tough. But yeah, good wish. Go all back to normal.
Yes.
Yes. Your dream vacation spot?
It's tricky. I've been to some pretty cool places. I'm trying to think of where I'd want to go that I've never been. I think New Zealand is a place that jumps to mind just because I actually was in Australia for a while in college, and that was a place I always wanted to go. And I didn't have a chance to make it over there. And it still pains me that when I was that close, even New Zealand and Fiji actually are two places over there that I wish I.
Yes. Yeah, Fiji
But
would be.
there's places, yeah, it'd be neat, and places in Asia too that I would love to see some of the Japanese or
Yes.
Chinese cultures in person. I just am fascinated by
Oh
that.
yeah, definitely. Now, did you travel a lot during?
So I love traveling. I've been when I was in high school. I spent about 2 weeks in Europe with my parents when I was 15. So I certainly didn't appreciate that as much as I wish I would have.
Uh-huh.
Um, but I got to see some pretty neat countries while we were over there. And then I did study abroad in Australia for 4 months as a college student, and that was amazing. And you learn a lot about yourself when you go out and do something totally different than you've ever done. But being able to speak the same language helped not make
Yep.
that as difficult a transition. And then
Yes.
right before children, my wife and I did a really neat trip to Greece where we kind of stayed on a few different islands, and that was kind of our big trip before we started the family, and that's been great.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do love it. I've got relatives in an Eastern European country called Estonia. It's like 1 million people. It's really small, but it's where both of my grandparents are from there. And I got a chance to go there 2 summers ago for the first time, and now I'm just dying to go back because I met like 30 relatives. They were all just the nicest people in the world. Like everyone was so excited you were there, and you just felt so connected to these people who you'd never even met before. And so yeah, it's been amazing to keep those relationships going, and I'm already planning to go back with my entire family as
Yes.
soon as the travel bans get lifted and
Oh
things.
yes, I know. Yeah, I know. We had a plan. We were gonna do a cruise. We had a 10-year anniversary with my wife last
Yep.
November, and our plan was to take a cruise from LA to Hawaii,
Yeah.
just to go. Oh man, but because of COVID, of course, we're like, no. But
I hear you.
cruises are amazing. You ever done a cruise
I
or
did one
been?
cruise
Yes.
in college. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was great. Yeah, I mean it's different because you don't get quite that experience because you kind of hop on and off and back
Yes.
on
Uh-huh.
the boats before you're ready to go. But
Yes.
in terms of just the luxury lifestyle,
It
it's pretty
really
sweet.
is. It's
You eat
nonstop
well,
eat. Oh, you do too much. You need those stretchy pants.
very much so. Yeah,
Well, I
yeah.
did. I did. That was back in the day. All right, so Kevin, we're gonna answer or ask some questions from the audience. So here's a question: how do you deal with difficult parents?
Yeah, I mean that definitely happens. I think ultimately, my role is to try to just help them come to a place where they know that I am on their team and I'm here to help their child and care about them just like they do. And just sometimes angry parents just need a place to vent too. And I think sometimes I've gotten better at just being able to tell the difference between somebody who just needs to be heard and
Yes.
then giving them that sounding board that they may need, and then to try to help bring them to a place where they can have a conversation that will actually be productive. But it's so rare. But I've had cases where you've said, I'm going to stop this here. We're going to pick it back up when it seems like it's a more appropriate time, because right now I just don't think you're in a place where we're going to
Yes.
make progress. And but that we've got really great families in this community, and I'll tell you, even when I read an email that I know someone's upset about something, I call them. I don't email back, because when you call someone and you let them know, hey, I sense that you're upset. First
Yes.
of all, they're surprised that you called, and then they recognize this person's trying to help me, and their
Yes.
guard just comes down. And then you get to really figure out what is the root of the problem. And sometimes it's, we as parents are emotionally tied to our children, and sometimes we listen to them before we
Yes.
really ask the teacher for what's going on. And parents will come in and they're upset, but if they had just kind of taken the approach like, hey, child, thanks for sharing that with me. I believe you that that's your
Yes.
perception. I'm going to talk to the teacher and just make sure there's not another side or piece that's
Yes.
really important that's missing, instead of being like, what? They said what? I'm gonna, but I get it. You
Yes.
care about your kid, and sometimes you don't make sense when you're trying to, stick up for your child. So I
That's
get it.
good.
But
That's good.
yeah,
Awesome. Awesome. Here's another question. What are some qualities needed to become a good counselor?
sure. I think, you have to be patient. And you need to be very, very flexible. You can't, like I said earlier, you can't have that rigid personality where if you don't leave your day checking off every box on your to-do list, you're not going to be able to sleep at night. Like you really need to be able to just take things as they come and still, like I said, have a plan on what you'll do if the day goes as exactly as you planned, but it never will. But you got to be able to leave it at the door too. You know, I've had days where I've had some really heavy things happen. And that was something I was worried about coming into the profession. I didn't know how I would react to that when I left. Like, would I be able to let that go? Would I be able to just be present with my family? And I can say for me personally, I've been very fortunate. And when I do leave here, even on a really rough day, I'm pretty good about going home and just being dad and husband and not counselor. And you got to be able to compartmentalize those things to keep your own mental health in line.
That's a good point, because sometimes, well, certain jobs, but you know, bringing that home, you know, kind of maybe affecting your relationship or affecting your, you know, hey, relax, you know,
right?
Kevin, relax, right. You know,
gotta be able to separate the two for sure.
He just needs to vent. Kevin's just venting right now. Let's leave Daddy alone right now. Awesome. Okay, here we go. We have one right here. How much of your job includes helping students with their mental health versus helping them apply for colleges or other things?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it'll depend on which counselor you talk to and what is the kind of makeup of their school district to answer that question. You know, in this school district, I would say it's hard to break it down from a percentage standpoint because there are days or weeks where I feel like the very bulk of what I do is that future planning piece. And then there are weeks where I feel like I do nothing but help kids who are struggling with anxiety and just feeling overwhelmed. And but a lot of times it's a mix. So it's, you know, and I think I would say I personally need that mix to keep the energy level I need to be effective at this job. I think if I was, and I'm very fortunate to say that we have these mental health support providers in our district that I talked about earlier, who really focus more on some of the more challenging cases where students are going to need help for a longer period of time to overcome some of their debilitating levels of anxiety and things like that. So I think I know the difference between a student who just needs to vent, process, and needs some temporary relief or help to get past it versus the ones that are going to need a little more ongoing support. And in those cases, I go to my colleagues or my resources and connect the family with some outside services to support those kids. But it's definitely a mix. But I'm sure there are schools that would tell you, I'd love to spend more time on the future planning and the, you know, the college applications and things like that. But like, I am just overwhelmed by trying to support students on the mental health side of things, or, you know, it really just depends on the district and the resources in place. So I think as you're considering the type of, you know, if this sounds like an interesting career field to you, you'd want to research the types of districts and talk to the people who work there and to understand the type of help you could provide, because some people would much prefer to be more of the mental health support. And there are great ways and great need for that, for sure.
Yes. Oh, awesome. And how do you deal, another question is, how do you deal with culture differences in school or the people?
Yeah, no, I love that question. And I think working in Dublin, there's this misperception about, you know, oh, it's Dublin. They don't have like the diversity. They don't have, but I'll tell you what, I'm one of 3 high schools here, and Coffin's the largest right now. We've got almost 2,000 students. I mean, I would love for people who feel that way about Dublin to come and just kind of walk through our halls, and I think they'd be shocked by the diversity. And I mean, well over 20, 30 languages represented in our building, and just students literally from all over the world and every type of background imaginable are here. And I think it really is a microcosm in this building of what a lot of the world is like, because we've got kids from all over, and it does make things challenging from a cultural standpoint sometimes, but we have cultural training in our school district. We have an amazing English learner support staff here in our building who works with those students who are making that transition from, you know, someone who's learning the English language to trying to get into the regular classrooms and get the requirements they need to graduate. But I think it's just having that open mind to educate yourself and to ask questions if you're not sure of how to best support someone from a cultural standpoint. And we've got a really great staff who's willing to do that and to learn. And it is challenging though, because it is having people from all over the world to try and
Yes.
help and connect
Yeah,
with,
of course.
their views on what they're willing to do to help in a certain situation might be different than what we're used to. So it's a pretty cool place to be, though. I mean, I've met some of the just coolest kids from all over the world
Yeah.
who I am blown away by with just their work ethic and their positive attitude being dropped somewhere where they barely speak the language sometimes, and for them to still take an approach that I can do this and I'm gonna figure it out. It's awesome, man.
That's awesome. That's awesome. um, Here we go. Last question. How was your transition from being a salesman to counseling? How were you? Were you nervous? How was your first day?
Yeah, I think I was nervous in a good way. It was more of an excitement, I think, to feel that I had found something that was a much better fit for me as a person, and just where my strengths lied and my values. So I knew I'd found myself in a really good situation. I think I would have been much more nervous if I had been in a building where I was the only counselor. I think I would have been terrified. But I think a big reason they were willing to take a chance on someone that didn't have maybe as much education experience was because I was joining a team that was loaded with experience, and they knew that I would say it probably even helped me get into this job at this particular school with my unique background, because it was something different that they didn't have in this department yet. And it is something to have that professional experience that you can help kids understand in a way that you can't if you've never lived it. So
Yes.
I don't know. I think it's good to also just know someone in a role that seems to really like it, and to know, hey, they didn't start there. Like it took them a while to figure it out, and that was okay.
Yeah, yeah, that is awesome. That is awesome. It's good to hear, because we've done interviews, but we've noticed that people change. They grow up, they want to study this, they think this is it, but then they're just like, no, I'm doing something else that they love doing. And it sounds
Yeah.
like the way you're talking about it sounds like you're just passionate. You love it. It's like not a job, and that's what
Yeah,
we
it's
want.
it's awesome. It really is. I know I got very lucky to land where I did, but
Awesome.
it's been a great fit. Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate
Awesome.
that.
No, we appreciate you. Is there anything you want to tell the students, maybe right now, who's like, maybe not knowing what to do or where to go? Maybe just some
Sure.
words of encouragement.
I think, just to kind of build on what we were just talking about, just try whatever sounds interesting at the time, and know that you're always allowed to change your mind. I think students get caught up in, I don't know what I want to do with the rest of my life. I'm only 16. I'm only 17. Yeah, of course you don't. Chances are, if you do, you're going to change your mind, or you're going to need to adapt at some point anyway, and develop a
Yes.
new skill set. So that's where we're kind of coming back to, be a reader, be someone who pursues developing new skills that you can use, whether it's going to be for your career or not. Because people with skills, and if you understand computers, or if you understand communication, if there's just things that go along with and compare with almost any career. And right now, with the way technology is changing the job market, and the way certain jobs are becoming available that were never a thing in the past. I mean, there are people that literally are like professionals on Twitter and YouTube and bloggers, and like it's all like online
Yeah.
related. So I think
Oh
just
yeah.
practicing your writing skills, learn basic coding, try things. If you're not sure what to do, don't just say, well, I don't know, so I'm not going to do anything. Like,
Yes.
just talk to people. There's so many people who love to talk to those who are interested in learning about what they do. So find a mentor, find people who will take you under their wing, and and if it's not a good
That's
fit,
good.
that's okay.
That's good. Awesome. Awesome. Kevin Patton, thank you so much for letting us walk in your shoes and kind of get the feel of it, the emotion of what you had to do, your ups and downs. Guys, I hope you guys learned a lot from Mr. Kevin Patton, a school counselor. And if you know anyone that you think we should interview, send us the name. We'll be more than happy to get in touch and just to kind of walk in their shoes like we did with Kevin. Again, Kevin, thank you so much for letting us walk in your shoes, and thank you for your time. Again, I hope you guys enjoyed this program, A Walk in My Shoes. I'm your host, Daniel. I'll see you guys next week. Bye, guys.